Again, for those of you new to the briefing and the story, my name is Jennifer Rohde, and I am the Air Safety Investigator for the National Transportation Safety Board, the investigator in charge, or IIC, for this accident investigation. Late yesterday evening, we were able to get ahead of schedule with the wreckage recovery, which was fortunate due to the amount of snowfall that they have received in the Boulder area. We were able to recover all of the wreckage that was flagged and identified during the 2-day on-scene investigation. All of the wreckage that was identifiable was removed from the scene and has been taken north to Greeley, Colorado, to a facility entitled Beagles Aircraft, and the wreckage will remain there for the duration of the investigation.
I know one of the first questions that a lot of people have been wondering is why the airplanes weren't under control of air traffic control. And kind of a misnomer that the airspace is called uncontrolled airspace. Actually, most of the airplanes are being tracked, but they're not required to call an air traffic controller. So most of the responsibility falls on the pilot, often called see and avoid. So they just make sure that the area is clear of other airplanes, only used on clear days, like it was on Saturday. Like today it wouldn't work, that's why you're not seeing any airplanes flying in the air. But there's also a radio frequency that is assigned to this area, and so the pilots can make radio calls on the frequency, but they don't actually make them to anybody in particular. They just make these broadcast calls of their position, their altitude, their intentions. Sometimes they'll even ask, are there other airplanes in the area? You know, so they're basically controlling themselves. And in some ways it works even better because the pilot doesn't have a false sense of security. It's up to them to be clearing the airspace around them. And you know, we operate that way 365 days a year. And very few incidences anywhere in the United States in uncontrolled airspace. But yes, the onus is on the pilots involved.
Late yesterday evening, we had an opportunity to speak with the pilot of the Schweitzer glider, and his statement to us verbally during our interview was consistent with a written statement that he had provided to the Boulder Police Department and the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. And again, to reiterate that statement, he was in flight behind the Piper Pawnee tow plane. The flight was in a level, as in the airplanes were not banking. They were in a level flight. They were in a slight climb. They were approximately 70 miles an hour in airspeed when he noticed out of the corner of his eye the Cirrus airplane moving towards him. He described it silver in color, and immediately felt the perception that there was going to be an impact between the Cirrus and possibly the tow rope. And so he reached to release between the glider, Schweitzer, and the Piper Pawnee tow plane. And very shortly thereafter, the Cirrus impacted the right side of the Piper Pawnee. According to radar data and statements from the pilot, the Cirrus was southbound and appeared to be in nearly straight and level flight. There was no bank, there was no maneuver involved. He was wings level, and there appeared to be no climb or descent from his perception. And the same held true for the Piper Pawnee and the glider tow flight. They were in a westbound direction, again approximately 70 miles per hour, and there was absolutely no maneuver and no movement of the Piper Pawnee prior to the impact. This morning we continued with the course of our investigation. We were able to interview both passengers that were on board the airplane, and their statements are exactly consistent with the written statements that they provided previously, and consistent with the pilot's statement of the Schweitzer glider. This afternoon we've gathered evidence here in the Boulder area. We documented the glider, and at this point we can state that the glider sustained absolutely no damage during the impact sequence, despite its flight through the fireball shortly after the impact between the the Pawnee and the Cirrus aircraft. The remainder of the day will be spent following up with the multitude of witnesses who have called and left messages and sent emails passing on to us their statements, their observations, their photographs. Tomorrow morning we will start up at Beagle's Aircraft at 7:30, and we will do a partial 3D reconstruction of the Piper Pawnee, and that will allow us to understand a little bit more of the impact angles between the Cirrus and the Piper Pawnee.
One of our pilots that I work with here at the airport was in the area flying when this happened, and he said that was actually the first time he knew about the collision, because Ruben, the glider pilot, called up on that radio frequency and declared Mayday. And Tracy was this gentleman's name that was flying, and he basically responded to Ruben and reassured him that they would call 911 and they would get all the emergency apparatus and help in any way he could. And so I think that was probably the first 911 call. I imagine there were many afterward when people saw the smoke, but the initial Mayday call was made by Ruben. And I believe, and obviously I'm not 100% sure, but Tracy said Ruben kind of circled a few times to see if he could assist or gather any information that might be helpful later, and then was able to keep his composure and come back to the airport and land uneventfully after that happened. It's hard to say at this point if they saw each other and didn't have time to avoid each other, or if there was a glare off the windshield. It's really hard to say. And the NTSB, they're experts at finding all the pieces and putting them back together again. So I think after all the interviews and looking at the equipment and the eyewitnesses and things, I think we'll have a better picture of what happened. But I think it would be an error to try to speculate at this point why the two planes collided.
Again, that final factual report comes out between 6 and 8 months after the initiation of the investigation, and we don't do that to keep everybody on edge. We do that so that we're slow and methodical, and we don't miss or overlook any aspects of safety that may be pertinent to this accident. The purpose rather of the National Transportation Safety Board is to establish the facts and circumstances surrounding the accident, establish a probable cause. That is from our 5-member board in Washington, D.C. That's approximately 2 months after the release of the final factual report, and to make recommendations and identify methods where we can improve aviation safety so that accidents like this don't happen again.